David is accused of killing Celeste Rivas Hernandez, a 14-year-old from Lake Elsinore. Her dismembered body was found in his Tesla at a tow yard in Hollywood. Burke has pleaded not guilty.
Before she was even dead, he'd already written a song about killing someone he loved, called it romantic homicide, and no one thought to ask what it meant until it was too late. For a year and a half, her family didn't know if she was alive. He knew the whole time. While they searched, while they waited by their phones, her body sat inside his car. Not for days, not for weeks. For 4 months, parked outside his own house. He kept living his life. He kept making music. He live-streamed with friends, and at one point, he apologized to them for a smell he didn't explain. Then, in September, a tow yard worker noticed something wrong. What he found ended one search and started a much bigger one. And months later, in a courtroom, prosecutors put photographs in front of him. Photographs of what was left of her. He didn't flinch, didn't react. Nothing. Her mother did. "All we want," she said, "is justice for Celeste." This is the case of Celeste Rivas Hernandez, and the man millions knew as a rising music star. Welcome to True Crime Case. Before this becomes a story about a courtroom, it's the story of a family in Lake Elsinore, California, a working town about 80 miles southeast of Los Angeles. Celeste Rivas Hernandez was the daughter of Jesus Rivas and Mercedes Martinez. In a statement released through their attorney, Patrick Steinfeld, they said, "Celeste was a beautiful, strong girl who loved to sing and dance. Friday movie nights were a tradition in their household, the ordinary rhythm of a family with no idea it was living through its final year with her. She was, by every account made public, a 7th grader, a daughter, a sister, a cousin, a friend. Almost nothing else about her daily life has been made public, and we're not going to fill that silence with guesses dressed up as fact. For over a year, this family lived inside a question with no answer, as loved ones grew increasingly worried about where she was and who she was with. There's no way to script what that stretch felt like for them, and we won't try. What we do know, because they said it themselves, is what came after. When investigators identified her remains in September 2025, the family didn't lead with anger. They led with gratitude, thanking the Los Angeles Police Department and the District Attorney's Office for their work, and thanking their community in Lake Elsinore for standing behind them. Months passed before they said anything more. According to Steinfeld, a bomb threat following the defendant's arraignment forced the family to cancel plans to speak with reporters directly. He described them as private people, exhausted and emotionally drained, after hearing in open court exactly what prosecutors believed had happened to their daughter. They buried her on October 6, 2025, at Queen of Heaven Cemetery in Rowland Heights, a month after her remains were released back to them by the county. Friends and extended family gathered that day to remember her as more than a case number. That's where this story actually begins. Not with an arrest and not with a courtroom, but with a phone call in February of 2024, when a sheriff's department went looking for a missing girl and found her phone connected to a man the world was about to meet in a very different way. That February, Celeste was reported missing. The Riverside County Sheriff's Department, working her case out of her hometown, found a phone number saved in her phone belonging to David Anthony Burke, the 20-year-old musician known professionally as D4VD. They called him directly. Burke said he'd spoken with Celeste a few days earlier, but told them he didn't know she was a minor, or that she'd even been reported missing. That call was enough to send deputies to his Los Angeles home for a welfare check, and body camera footage from that visit later surfaced publicly at his preliminary hearing. In that footage, deputies ask him directly about Celeste. Burke is cooperative. He hands over several phone numbers he says belong to her. He pulls up a photo on his phone to show them who they're looking for. He explains that the two of them had met in person at a beach in November of 2023 and gives an address for where that meeting happened. He tells them they first connected online through a video game chat room and continued talking across Discord, Instagram, and Facebook. When deputies ask about her age, Burke tells them, on the recording, "I thought she was 18. She told me that she was 18. According to testimony, deputies never definitively confirmed her age to him on the record, a detail his defense later leaned on. His defense would use this footage at the preliminary hearing to argue that whatever Burke knew or believed at the time was, at minimum, unclear. Celeste wasn't found at the home that day. The welfare check ended, and for the moment, the case went quiet. Why deputies didn't press further isn't something the available record explains, and we're not going to speculate about it. A CNN investigation later found that Celeste continued appearing in Burke's orbit both before and after this welfare check. In January of 2024, she appeared alongside him in a live stream on the platform Twitch, the two of them talking and joking until roughly 3 in the morning. Sometime between January and March of that year, Burke was photographed getting out of a black Tesla a few blocks from Celeste's home. A local teenager posted those photos to TikTok, and CNN was able to verify, through geolocation, exactly when and where they were taken. Celeste herself was reported missing 3 separate times in early 2024. New footage that surfaced later added another twist to that timeline. A Nest camera at her parents' home in Lake Elsinore recorded her on September 8, 2024, 4 months after she was first reported to have run away, arguing loudly with people she believed had pulled a prank on her family's house. The video, later obtained by TMZ from neighbors, showed she was very much alive and still coming around home months into a case the public had been told was a runaway situation. What is established through all of this is one simple fact. 14 months after that welfare check, according to prosecutors, Celeste would be dead. If this is your first time here, this channel covers cases with verified facts and actual court testimony, no filling gaps with guesses. Subscribe if you want to catch how this one develops. To understand what prosecutors say happened next, it helps to understand who David Anthony Burke was becoming during this same period. Born in Queens, New York, and raised in Houston, Texas, Burke first built an online following, making music for his own Fortnite gaming videos as a teenager. He released his first single, Run Away, in 2021, and the following year, Romantic Homicide, became a viral hit, leading to a recording contract while he was still 17 and still in high school. By 2023, he was releasing his own EPs and opening for SZA on tour. In November of that same year, the month prosecutors say his relationship with Celeste turned sexual, he performed on Jimmy Kimmel Live. She was 13 at the time, he was 18. Investigators later testified that within a few months, Celeste was pregnant. Text messages read into the record at the preliminary hearing showed Burke writing to her in January of 2024, "I'm sorry again, baby. I didn't want to ever put you through this." And Celeste replying that neither of them was able to care for a child. She had an abortion soon after. By early 2025, he was playing Coachella and appearing at Paris Fashion Week. His career was accelerating fast, and according to prosecutors, that acceleration is central to why Celeste ended up dead. According to a court filing, Burke sent a car to bring Celeste from Lake Elsinore to the Hollywood Hills home he was renting on the night of April 23, 2025. The two exchanged messages until she arrived. After that, according to prosecutors, her phone went dead and she was never seen alive again. Prosecutors allege that Celeste had threatened that night to expose their relationship publicly at the exact moment Burke's debut album, Withered, was 2 days from release. It would go on to chart on the Billboard 200. A financial witness later testified that Burke had earned more than $10 million between 2023 and 2025, testimony prosecutors are using to support one of 3 special circumstances attached to the murder charge, that the killing was committed for financial gain, specifically to protect that career. The other 2 allege lying in wait and murdering a witness to an investigation. In this case, prosecutors say, a witness to abuse Celeste herself had experienced. Together, These three special circumstances are what make the case eligible for the death penalty, a decision the district attorney's office has said it has not yet made. What's described above is what prosecutors allege and intend to prove at trial, not proven fact, and Burke has pleaded not guilty to every charge against him. This is where the case turns, according to prosecutors, from an alleged killing into an alleged cover-up. Detective Joshua Byers, the lapped homicide investigator who led much of this case, testified that between May 1st and May 5th, 2025, Burke used the alias Travion Davis to order 2 chainsaws, a body bag, and an inflatable pool online. He paid for all of it with his own credit cards and had everything delivered directly to his own home. Investigators later recovered most of these items, including 2 of the 3 chainsaws and the pool, from his garage when a search warrant was served. DNA testimony presented at the preliminary hearing tied Celeste to bloodstains found in that same garage. On July 7, 2025, prosecutors allege Burke separately ordered a burn cage. Celeste's remains stayed inside the front trunk of his Tesla for the next 4 months. The car sat on a residential street in the Hollywood Hills for weeks, and according to neighbors, it drew notice long before anyone understood why. People walking past it began to complain about a smell. Eventually, it was reported as an abandoned vehicle and towed, an ordinary bureaucratic action, the kind of thing that happens to overlooked cars in cities every day. It was only once the vehicle reached the tow yard on North Mansfield Avenue on September 8, 2025, that a worker there noticed the smell was far worse up close and made the discovery that turned a routine tow into a homicide investigation. Court documents unsealed months later described exactly what officers found inside the front trunk: 2 separate bags, one holding her head and torso, covered in insects, and a second, hidden beneath it, holding her arms and legs. What had been, for 4 months, a car parked in plain sight on a public street, became the center of one of the most closely watched criminal cases in the country. Identifying Celeste took investigators time, given the condition of her remains. Her family learned on September 18th that what had been found the week before was their daughter. Her funeral followed on October 6th at Queen of Heaven Cemetery. For 7 more months after that discovery, nothing happened publicly. No arrest, no charges filed, just a family that finally had a body to bury, and still no one held responsible for putting it there. Behind the scenes, the case was moving through a grand jury 7 separate times during this period. Robert Morganroth, president of Burke's own touring company, and Neo Langston, a friend of his, were among those called to testify, though the specific content of what they said has not been made public. Prosecutors also reportedly sought grand jury testimony from Burke's own family, his father Dawood, his mother Colleen, and his brother Caleb, all of whom live in Texas and have fought the summons on due process grounds, a legal dispute that remains unresolved as prosecutors moved forward with the case against Burke himself. The arrest itself came without much warning to the public. In April 2026, TMZ cameras captured officers arriving at Burke's Hollywood Hills home, the same residence where he'd celebrated his 21st birthday just weeks earlier. Officers in tactical gear can be seen on the footage giving instructions through the gate before it opens, and Burke is walked out in handcuffs onto the street where, 7 months earlier, a car containing Celeste's remains had sat unnoticed for weeks. Days later, District Attorney Nathan Hochman stood before reporters and announced the charges, calling it the brutal and horrific murder of Celeste. He laid out 3 counts: first-degree murder with special circumstances, continuous sexual abuse of a child under the age of 14, and unlawful mutilation of human remains. Burke pleaded not guilty at his arraignment. His defense told the court directly, David Burke did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez, nor was he the cause of her death. At that same hearing, his defense complained they'd received almost no discovery from prosecutors, no autopsy report, only a brief follow-up report and a copy of the complaint, Despite prosecutors' claim that the case involved roughly 40 terabytes of evidence, Burke was held without bail, and his case moved toward a preliminary hearing that would be delayed 3 separate times before finally beginning on July 21st, 2026. Throughout these court appearances, Burke was brought in wearing an orange jail uniform and dark-rimmed glasses. At one hearing, his attorneys requested that his shackles be removed, arguing they were undignified and unnecessary. The court denied that request, though it did allow his handcuffs to come off. A preliminary hearing works differently than a trial. There is no jury. Judge Charlene Olmedo alone would decide whether prosecutors had shown probable cause, not proof beyond a reasonable doubt, for the case to proceed to a full trial. No cameras were allowed inside the courtroom. Over 4 days, testimony moved through several categories of evidence in turn, and the defense pushed back on nearly all of it, cross-examining detectives aggressively about evidence handling and questioning why certain physical items recovered from the investigation were not preserved for DNA testing. Detective Byers testified about the alias purchases and the items recovered from Burke's garage. Financial witnesses testified about Burke's earnings, supporting the financial gain allegation. Then came the forensic testimony. Medical examiner Dr. Ho testified that Celeste's death was a homicide caused by multiple penetrating injuries, but he stated plainly that he could not determine who inflicted them or the exact circumstances surrounding her death from the autopsy alone. That gap matters more than it might seem. On cross-examination, Burke's defense suggested that Celeste may have taken her own life. Whether that argument holds up under real scrutiny is something only a full trial could settle, and as of this recording, no trial date has been set. One more piece of evidence came from an unlikely place. In January of 2026, a state highway worker doing roadside traffic control on Highway 154 in the hills north of Santa Barbara, more than 85 miles from Burke's home, stepped off the shoulder into the brush and found Celeste's passport identification card lying in the dirt. California Highway Patrol Officer Sean Buenrostro testified to the discovery at the hearing. Nobody has explained how it ended up there, but it became one more thread investigators used to piece together what happened to her. Digital evidence rounded out the hearing, messages between Burke and Celeste, and material investigators say they recovered from his phone, which prosecutors argue corroborates both the relationship and its timeline. Celeste's parents attended multiple days of this hearing, including during the most graphic testimony about her remains. Offered the chance to leave the courtroom before it began, they chose to stay. When the hearing concluded on July 24, 2026, no ruling had yet been issued. Whether Burke will be held to answer, and whether this case proceeds to a full trial, remains Judge Olmedo's decision to make. Several things remain genuinely open right now. Whether Burke will face trial, whether prosecutors will seek the death penalty, what becomes of the ongoing fight over his family's grand jury testimony. Even Celeste's exact age at the time of her death has varied between different news outlets, though the most recent court reporting settles on 14. What isn't open to debate is this. A 13-year-old girl went missing in February of 2024, and it took a year and a half, a car nobody wanted to claim, and months of quiet grand jury work before her family had any real answers at all. Whatever a courtroom decides next, that part of the story doesn't change. Tell us in the comments where you think this case lands, held for trial, dismissed, or something else no one's expecting. And if this is the kind of case breakdown you want more of, subscribe, because there's more coming as this one develops. Where do you think Judge Olmedo rules? Let us know below.